And we're live. What's up, everyone? We don't have a guest today. We have a business partner and group moderator, Jordan Bloomingdale. Jordan is the founder of DreamLife Innovations, a company dedicated to helping individuals achieve a better financial future. With over 6 years of experience in the financial industry, Jordan is an absolute authority when it comes to building wealth and mastering your finances. Today, we'll be tapping into his invaluable expertise as we dive into critical mindset shifts needed for better credit, how to set up and achieve meaningful financial goals, and his top 5 credit tips, plus powerful budgeting tools and strategies. Whether you're looking to get out of debt, improve your financial score, or simply take control of your finances, this episode is going to be packed with game changing insights and actionable advice from Jordan. A quick intro and word from our sponsors. Haha. Finance for individuals and business all began with a vision, a community where like minded individuals could gather on social media to share their passions, experience, and knowledge for a brighter future. Our mission is simple: to foster growth, development, and keep pushing everyone forward. We believe everyone has the potential to succeed, and we're here to support that journey. Join our community of leaders and visionaries as we learn, grow, and build a brighter future together. For those on YouTube and other platforms, this is originally a Facebook group, and we're going to be keeping it here. Join our Facebook group. Link is below. Also, it is facebook.com/group/finance for individuals and businesses. We'll see you there. Now, Jordan has helped countless individuals and families transform their relationship with money, and I know the value he's about to drop is going to be absolutely game changing. So get ready to take some serious notes. Jordan, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here, man. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm super excited to be here as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. I've known you for a long time, man. How's I know business is going good. You've had a lot of traction recently, and I know that you have a couple different ventures with Dream Life. You want to dive into those details real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been a roller coaster for sure, but it's one that, I've enjoyed every minute of it. And it's been a learning experience as we go through. So really what started out as a side business really kind of changed my life, to be honest with you. I was one of those that, came out of college with debt, with collections, with credit cards, and you name it, and didn't have any financial literacy. And I started this company out of my own need. And so today, as you know, we'll dive into that a little bit later on. But today, what sprouted out of that seed is now a full fledged financial empowerment company that can take a renter, someone who is aspirational about becoming a homeowner, teaching them the ways, enabling them, putting processes into place, helping them become a homeowner, but then not just stopping there, but taking it further and teaching them about assets, about wealth generation, about generational wealth, including tools like residential solar and storage solutions, and really helping them overcome those homeowner obstacles and that homeowner overhead, um, and helping them decrease things like their electric bill, and so they can live a more fruitful, more empowering life. So,
Right.
been a blessing.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever people understand living under your means so you can go and do the things that you want to do, it really changes things. And kind of that kind of bridges into the conversation topic of mindset with credit. Um, just having a good mindset is really a game changer in increasing your financial stability. What's a couple things that you've come across with the mindset and kind of dealing with that? Because I know that it's not like you're really supporting them. You're helping guide them and explain to them like this is all part of the process, and there's a lot of ups and downs whenever you're going through whenever you're trying to build everything back. Sometimes it can be tough for people, but that's where you step in and you help a lot of people go through that. Um, can you kind of dive into mindset a little bit?
Yeah, it's a major component. The first thing I remind people, whether they end up becoming my client or not, is that in order to seek help, you have to be willing to accept it, right? Not everyone is looking for something different, or not everyone is mentally allowing themselves or ready to accept help. And so that's a big portion of it. I know typically you hear that in other capacities, right? But it's the same in the financial world as well. And so, if you have big goals, if you have big dreams, um, you have to be ready to accept change. And there's going to be a lot of it depending on the size of your goals. But as you're going through, yeah, there's a lot of mindset hurdles that people aren't anticipating. So, one of the things that I kind of half jokingly talk about sometimes is, we all want an 850 credit score, but not a lot of us know what it takes to get to an 850 credit score. And so, we it's kind of one of those things that it how quickly did you go from, maybe a 700 initially down to a 430? It didn't happen overnight. And so going backwards, or going forwards rather, after going backwards, is not going to happen overnight either. So there's a little bit of delayed gratification there. There's a little bit of mindset and overcoming obstacles. There's some mindset around, maybe, I don't know if PTSD is the right word, but just rebuilding disciplines, and
Right.
relearning how to properly manage money, how to use credit cards properly. A lot of us don't even weren't even taught originally how to use credit cards properly, so we're just learning on our own. But whenever you start to learn how to do it properly, it's a whole new world. So yeah, mindset is huge in multiple different instances of financial literacy and financial education.
Right. Yeah. Mindset's probably the biggest shift. It's definitely the biggest shift, realizing what is assets, what is liabilities, and what you're spending your money on. What benefits does this have for me in the short term, the long run? There's a lot of big things to consider, but once you get used to it, it's almost like riding a bike. Um, it's pretty
Absolutely.
easy
Yeah.
to stay on it and everything once your mindset and everything really adapts. Um, it's really a snowball effect. It just gets easier and easier and easier. Um, I've seen that with a handful of people. I know we're not old men yet, but we've lived long enough and heard enough stories to see, the success stories, the failures, and all that stuff. And it's always good to pass on that information. But mindset, with it's one of the biggest things whenever you're like on a really strict budget or not going out as much. It just you can feel very alone and you feel stuck at the same time. And sometimes it feels like your wheels are just spinning and you're spinning and staying in the same place. But it's there's definitely movement. It's just harder to see.
You're
It's
right. Yeah.
you have to be pretty patient whenever it comes to credit. Um,
Yeah, it can be a slow moving machine, and that's a great point. With so much commercialization these days, you got Amazon seemingly having a sale every other week. You've got malls and online commercials and deals and this, that, and the other. And it's like if you're not spending money on something, then you're not part of the cool club, so to speak. But
right.
the timeless saying is boring is valuable. It doesn't matter if it's stocks or budget or just your goals, your life goals in general. Boring is valuable. So
Yeah. There's oh man, I'm a boring person then.
not
No,
anything
it's
wrong with that.
there's 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 definitely a lot of different things you can do to really curb your appetite for hunger for more whenever you're on your budget and all that stuff and really it comes down to creating more. focusing on creating and not consuming. I say that quote quite a bit. I can't remember where I heard it, but it's uh, it's really made a big impact because you sit there and whether it's late at night, you might just be scrolling. And what are you doing? You're just consuming information. You're not actually putting anything to work.
Right.
Like for example, I created this Instagram account a while back and was just posting nothing but business stuff on there because I wanted to create like a scroll with purpose kind of thing so people can come
Mhm.
to it's just a library of business stuff. But but eventually you're just scrolling. Even if you have something as productive as that, you're still just scrolling and you're not putting anything into action. You have to like actually take the material, break it down, use a strategy, talk to someone else, talk to people about it. It's really good to have open conversations whenever you're working on things because there's a lot of uh, constructive criticism that could people can offer, or just more tools that people could give you, or someone else to talk to that knows a whole bunch about it. It's just an extremely small world, and whatever you're working on, you're not the only one.
Right.
Um, that's just
It's
that's
very
what
true.
I've learned. I used to feel very alone for a really long time just because I thought that, I was one of the only ones on my little journey in my own little world. My mindset was a little messed up from other stuff, but it still kind of kept me secluded from the public and asking for help. And really asking for help is really I contribute a lot of my I'm not like a wildly successful person by any means, but a lot of my successes and things that I've achieved is because I asked for help. I looked for training, I did research, and I talked to people that have done it before.
Right.
And
Success
when
leads
some
to wisdom.
right, and when someone like you who has gone through it and now you're running a business surrounding credit, it's just an easy outreach. Um, and to whoever's listening, I don't know if you know Jordan Bloomingdale, if you know him or not. If you don't, you definitely should add him on Facebook. He's a networking machine and he could put you in touch with a lot of people and help you with a lot of resources within his own network or just tools. He's definitely an awesome person to get in touch with. Sorry to plug you real quick. I meant to throw
I
that in
appreciate
earlier,
it.
but it's really a big advantage whenever you start partnering with people, especially on credit. Credit's really confusing, and especially because they change laws, um,
Right.
and it's not everyone's job to really keep up with those laws. That would be you,
That's me.
and
Yeah.
you're the expert. That's why people should go to you. But um, I know we talked a little bit. I mean, we really punched in on mindset, but I think there's just so many different aspects to the mindset of building your credit. Like for instance, like impulse purchases. I made a post recently in the group, something about how do you save money or different ways you save money. And if I ever have an impulse purchase like Amazon or something, I'll have it sit in my cart for at least a week. And if I need it after a week and my emotions have calmed down from that impulse and I actually need it, it's going to be useful, then I'll buy it. I don't.
Great.
I
Great thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't I used to do impulse purchases whenever Groupon was cool and they didn't notify you about any shipping or anything, and then you just start getting random packages that you completely forgot about. That is just a waste of money.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's interesting how everything's kind of shifted from Groupon to Amazon. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, man, that's mindset's a pretty big thing. Did you wanna add did you have an example recently where you helped someone with their mindset, like, probably in the last week or 2 that's fresh on your mind?
Let's see. Man, there's been so many. And speaking of, if let me think on that for a second. But I wanted to add about what you were saying about community because you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, community is so big. You hear the old adage, if you're friends with four millionaires, you're going to become the fifth one. And on the outside, it's like, okay, well, what are they just going to all equally give me a portion of money and I become the fifth millionaire? But no, it's not. It's not that. Uh, in the physical sense, but it is kind of true in the fact that what you're around is what you become. And so if you're around people who are continuously going to the mall and spending at the movies and going, all these frivolous places and just spending, like they're going to move to a different world tomorrow, you're going to be that same type of person. But if you're on the other side and you're part of a community like we have, where people are asking for different strategies. They're asking for tips. They're saying, "Look, I'm trying to achieve this goal. What's the best way to do that?" You're going to start to learn in that mindset, and you're going to start to reactively go to that place versus another type of place. And so, to your question, yeah, there was a lady that I was working with not too long ago, and her goal, was for this year to purchase a home, and still is, um, but the thing was she had debt. She had credit card debt, she had just, different types of accounts and whatnot, and it wasn't so much that they had all fallen into collections and then we had to, like, scrape it off and whatnot. It was more so about those disciplines. She was like, "Look, I love Amazon and I love late night scrolling, late night purchases, just it gets that dopamine going, and then I sleep better and all this kind of stuff." And I'm like, "Well, okay, first of all, I'm on the health side of things. I'm sure we could figure out a better, more fruitful way to go about that to get you to sleep better." But I said, it's a trance. you know, it's a mindset trance. And if you and another word for trance is addiction. You can be addicted to buying, just like you can also be addicted to saving. And it's just, again, what is your addiction essentially? I know that's a taboo way of looking at it, but it's true. I mean, that's just the real nature of it. And
No,
so
that's dopamine
going back,
addiction is real. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And so going back to what you were talking about with that mindset, it's you have to instill those disciplines to the point where they become an addiction. And so there's a lot of different things that we can talk about with regards to budgeting and with savings and whatnot, but it all starts with your goals. If you want to be broke but have 15 Amazon boxes outside your door every day, that's a goal. On the flip side, if you want to have $500,000 in the bank and a 3,000 square foot house one day, that's a goal. And so, it's all up to what you want to do, but you have to be willing to make the changes to get there.
For sure. You have to really understand that foundation to take those first couple steps and for the rest of the journey to be easy. Because once you really understand the game, yeah, it's definitely life changing. It's definitely life changing. Um, like I know we spoke previously, and I definitely want you to bring up. You had a budget spreadsheet, or but how and I used to do this, and that's why it's easy for me to kind of identify. But whenever you're going through like your bank statement, or even just your all your credit card purchases, you should be able to easily identify what is a need and uh, what is a want. And then what's the other one? Nice to have.
Nice to have, yeah.
Yeah. So with needs, wants, and nice to have is what you call it.
That's the way that I call it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I learned just needs and wants. But I mean, nice to haves, those are nice to have. So,
They are,
uh,
yeah.
but I mean, you really have to earn them. And a lot of people just think that they're entitled to it just because that they've lived this long. They didn't think they would live this long, but they did, and they think that they're entitled to it. Um, it's uh, it's an interesting concept. It's definitely a newer generation thing, because a lot of people in our generation and older generation just have a natural work ethic, and they earn what they have, um, for the most part anyway. Um, but yeah, just kind of a blanket statement. But oh man, yeah, definitely a lot. definitely a lot there. Um,
Yeah.
what
It's
So I know I kind of talked about a strategy just then, but budgeting strategy, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of strategies that you'll get into, but really just starting from the very beginning, really you're trying to set up financial goals. How would you dissect financial goals whenever you're assessing or talking to someone? Because it's all over the place. Everyone, maybe someone wants to open up a nonprofit and have $1 million business, or someone just wants to make 50 grand a year and just chill on that, and that's just what they want. It's everything from top to bottom. Um,
yeah. Yeah, and it can be, pretty scattered, but, it's kinda like, and you know this about me, I'm a big analogy person. So it's kind of like, when you're shooting a shotgun, it's the spray and pray method. Well, if you're not focused on any one thing, then you're not gonna achieve anything. And so I'm kind of like, the way that I kind of approach it is not like a typical store, if you will, right? So like when you go to the store, you know that you're going there intending to purchase something, and when you make that transaction, you receive it, and that's it. It's black and white. You either bought it or you didn't. Well, when I'm working with a client, um, I'm more almost more like a behavioral scientist or like a problem solver, really, but like a from a psychology perspective, because what I'm there to do is really to help enable you and to help provide direction, but give you the tools and the processes to do so. So to your point, the first thing that we would do is really sit down and have that conversation around, okay, yeah, you may want $1 million in the bank, or you may want to make $100,000 a year, but why? Is it sure everybody wants a nice home, and everybody wants to have food on the table, but are you okay with eating at McDonald's, or would you rather have a steak dinner every night, or 3 nights a week, something like that? Are you okay with living in a one-bedroom studio, or do you want a 10-bedroom house? Um, Looking at those goals provides that roadmap, and that roadmap then sets us on that journey, and it in conjunction with the processes and the tools that we provide help them to become as successful as they want to be, and as far as grandiose of goals as they want to achieve. And so, to your point about the budget, it's like, okay, if I know what my goal is and I know how big or medium or small it is, then I know where if I'm backing out, I know where my starting point is. And that's really the most important part, because if you have your budget set, and to your point about the bank statements, um, I did a training on something very similar not too long ago. And it's really looking at the last 3 months of your bank statements, and it's taking three highlighters, to your point: needs, wants, nice to haves. And your needs really are just that. It's anything that you have to have in order to survive. I'm not talking about, if you already have 15 pair of blue jeans, I'm not talking about going out and spending on a 16th pair of blue jeans. You're good. You have fulfilled that need. um, and so, but on another note, a lot of people these days, I remember when they first started considering internet a need, and it's like I'm still not sold on it. I really am not, because you don't need it to breathe or to eat or to really live. Um, but it's such an ingrained part of our world these days that in a way, it kind of is a need, from a, I guess, socioeconomical perspective. But it's dictating those needs, and then once you have those taken care of, then you can start taking a look at your wants. Okay, your wants maybe a loose need, but it may be something like, okay, I need this for school, or I need this for work, or I need this as an improvement on my car. Yeah, the car works, so it satisfies that need, but it's a want to make the need a little bit better. And then the
Mhm.
nice to haves are really just kind of that play money. If I want to go out to a concert, that's a nice to have. It doesn't fulfill a need. It really isn't even a want. It's just, you know, okay, that's entertainment. And so when you're building out your budget, if you have your needs fulfilled, awesome, you're good to go. If you have your wants, oh wow, that was interesting. If you have your wants, then
That was
good to
kinda
go.
cool.
If you have your wants, then you're even in a better position. But if you have a little bit extra on top of that, well, now it's like, okay, well, I have a little bit extra. I've got 20 bucks. I can go spend it. If I just blow it, then I'm not compromising my lifestyle, right? It's I'm okay whether or not I have it or not. And so that's when you can start looking at things like, okay, maybe I take some of my nice to haves and I put more of it towards my investments. Um, because that needs is part of um or sorry, your investments, initial investments and your things like emergency fund, that's already in your needs. And so maybe I want to add a little bit more on top of that to get to my goals faster. But that's
Right.
again going back to that mindset. So I did that training not too long ago, and it was really beneficial, because it started changing people's outlook on how they view money and how it can work for them.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also, working towards their goals as well.
Um, do people usually have more lofty goals, or they usually a little more moderate?
Um, I would say they're pretty aspirational. I really would, which in my opinion, I'm okay with. I'm actually kind of glad because, these days, one thing that I didn't mention earlier is like we both know, inflation is running rampant. Things are like 10, 15% higher than they were just 6 months ago. Things are more expensive. And so budgeting is more important than it's ever been. I don't care if, I've seen people living paycheck to paycheck and they're making $250,000 a year. It doesn't matter how much you make. On the other side, I've seen people where they're making $30,000 a year and they're flush with cash. It budgeting can change everything. But, you know, with if you have a very aspirational outlook on life, that's not going to really hold you down. It can kind of dampen it a little bit for a season, but overall, you're gonna be wanting to get the most out of life that you can, and so I have seen that a pretty good bit. Sometimes I even have to kinda reel it back in, and they're like, "I really want to buy this house," and I'm like, "Okay, that's awesome," and you start looking at it, and it's valuated at $560,000, and you're like, "Yeah, I'd like to buy that house too." But it's like, okay, here starting with that starting point, and then let's grow into it. Let's
Right.
see what it takes to get to that point. Nothing is off the table until you take it off the table, but you also have to be realistic about it as well.
Yeah. And um, being realistic is a really big piece. What I used to, I mean, I still do, but whenever I see a lot of dream boards, kind of like dream boards come and go, some people, sometimes they're really popular, sometimes they're not.
Right,
Um, and the issue that I have with dream boards and stuff like that is people aren't saving to save. They're saving for something. They're not learning to save just to save. Um,
right.
whether you're saving or investing, it doesn't matter. It's still kind of the same concept. You're not spending your money outlandishly. You're not just blowing money. I mean, don't get me wrong, a dream board has stuff on there, some goals and all that stuff, but it's not it it shouldn't be the core reason why you're saving, because
Right.
there's a lot more than just what you put on that dream board that's available out there that you're going to find and you're going to be happy pursuing and all that stuff. But it just, yeah, man, it,
Yeah, no, that's a huge point. I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of touched on it a little bit with the emergency fund, but that's so important, man. Just to be able to, they I think the latest statistic is like 40% of all Americans don't have $1,000 set aside. $1,000. That's 10 $100 bills. That's nothing, basically. I mean, realistically, that's nothing.
yep,
And 40% of all Americans don't have that. So if they blow a tire, they're not able to pay for it. If they lose their job, they're basically now borderline homeless. Um, and it's like you don't know what you don't know. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked with people and they're like, "Oh, I can't pay for this right now. I have to wait 3 months." And it's like, "You have to wait 3 months? Why? Like, what are you spending between now and then? And if you're not spending anything, are you just working part-time? Or, like, what's really going on?" And it's like, I know what's going on. What's going on is that they have these lifestyle purchases that they think are important, they think are a need, but it's because they think they have to have it in the moment, and it's not being set aside for those rainy day instances. And so that's super important, man. Like there's a difference between goal setting and saving for your goals, and then what you're talking about in not even investing in like stocks and bonds, but just to have it to set it aside,
yep,
you know? Like if you want to buy something, there's a difference between wanting to buy it and setting aside to just have it sit there and knowing that, something I wish there was a way to like teach people, how we always talk about like you always hear that one person, man, I couldn't win the lottery to save my life. Well, buddy, you better have like 5 grand set aside because you're one of the most unluckiest people I've ever met. We all know that one person,
yep,
right? So it's like, if you know that you're unlucky, go ahead and set it aside. $1,000, 2, 5, whatever it takes for you to feel comfortable and for you to have that safety net. Huge, huge point. Yeah.
yeah. There's, man, what's the first book you read that really changed your mindset on money? Do you remember?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Um,
Either book or class or like what experience changed your mindset on money? So I
yeah.
didn't I did like chores, got an allowance, got a job the day I turned 15, all that stuff. But what really opened my eyes to money was doing paper trading. Paper trading
Mm,
is whenever you pretty much you have a fake account with fake money in it, or it's an account with fake money in it, and it's on a lot of different platforms. The one that I did was Market Watch, but I gave myself like $1 million or something like that for an
right.
entire year to spend and see what I could do with it by trading stocks, and that was super eye-opening to me just to be able to like make money overnight. Whenever you're trading stocks, whether you're actively trading or just holding, it doesn't really matter. But paper trading is what opened up my eyes to money. And I was
Yeah.
15. But I mean, sorry, the book. It was uh, super cliche, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was one of the first books. Super
I was
cliche.
I was gonna say mine was the same, honestly. Mine was the same. It
Because
was
he
the
taught.
biggest.
Mhm.
Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah.
I was
No,
just
he
gonna
talks
say
about
is
credit and everything. Yeah.
yeah. He really does, and is so the biggest thing that changed everything for me was being able to acquire assets. It wasn't so much that he talked about whether debt was good or bad. It was about being able to have my money work for me,
Hmm.
whether you were indebted or not. Um, and so being able to build assets, it doesn't matter. Like you could have something as little as, you know, this right here, a cell phone, and it can be an asset. If it's making money for you, that's an asset. And so it's funny, my dad, one of the houses that we grew up in, he had a library and he had a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I saw it for the longest time. But I thought it was like I never really intentionally picked it up um, until some years later. But I thought it was like a psychology book, like teaching your kids kind of thing. And in a
Yeah.
way, it kind of is, or kind of is. But it wasn't until we moved that I saw it on the top of one of the boxes one day, and I picked it up, and I just started trying, reading the foreword or whatever intro, and I took it home with me. I had moved out by that time. By the time they were moving, and I saw it, and I read it, and man, that changed everything for me. That and this protection plan that we'll get into here in a minute. Um, Between those 2 things, it really opened my eyes, and it wasn't so much that what I was doing was wrong, which I know it was, but it was how much better doing things the right way or a different way made it so much better, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Um, and I know you kind of started touching on tools and stuff like that. Did you want to get into the tips or the tools first? Because I know both are going to be
Mm,
pretty big. I want to do the tools first.
okay,
We can leave on the tips
okay,
because I know that you also have five more really powerful tips that you are working on that you're going to post on your own social media channel, so
yeah,
people can
awesome.
follow you and get the rest of the tips. But the budgeting tools, the first couple budgeting tools we talked about, um, and it's just it's crazy how, and you talked about it earlier, but it's crazy how we're not taught about finances, and that's one of the reasons why we started our group, is because you're not taught about finances in elementary school, middle school, or high school, really. And whenever you get to high school, it's just pretty much elective. I think now
Right,
they're requiring at least one class, but again, still the rest are elective, and they're not really teaching about finance in school. So
right,
there's just a lot of people who don't know much about finances, and that's why we started the group, help a lot of people out. And we actually had one question in there this morning about credit. I don't know if you saw it. I definitely want you to bring it up and touch on that. Um, and
yeah,
I told them about the live. I don't know if they're tuning in or not, but um, we can at least get that information over to them. But I know we kind of just did a whole circle of what we're just about to talk about, but the budgeting tools and everything, kind of starting from the beginning. Um, we previously talked about a ledger earlier in this
mhm,
podcast, and like being able to identify what is a need, want, and a nice to have. Um, there's there's definitely, it takes practice. It's not something that you can just look at and do.
yeah,
It can be annoying sometimes because it can feel very elementary, but at the same time, you're really changing and constructing your mind to kind of go with the flow of what you want to do in the future. Um, but the tools, you have one of the tools? Let me see.
yeah. Um, and I found that post. I can touch on that
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
here in just a second. Okay, yeah. So basically, they said, "Look, we're currently renting our home, looking to buy in the near future. At the moment, we're working on old debts to help raise our credit scores to where they need to be. I own 9 acres of land, areas, 9 I think it's supposed to be acres.
Yep.
My question is, should I sell that land and pay off my old and current debts, or should I keep it and just work to try and pay the debts off? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. So, my my first piece of feedback is I if you're able to, now if you're getting ready to lose a house or if you're, something along those lines or you owe the IRS or something like that, um, that's when I would consider getting rid of land. But land is an asset and they're not making any more of it. So, you know, I would hold on, especially 9 acres. I mean, that's basically unheard of these days.
That's
People,
nice.
pay $500,000 for a half an acre, in some parts of the country. Um, so I would say, and this kind of leads me into my first tool, is I would say if you have a budget, it needs to be revised. If you don't have a budget, then that should be your first step. And what I mean, like, so I one of the things I hear all the time when I ask that, do you have a budget? And they say, yeah, yeah, you know, pay for my utilities and my mortgage and my car note and everything. No, no, no. Do you have a budget? Do you have a landscape of everything that you're bringing in and then a purpose to everything that is going out? And they kind of look at me like I've got three eyes. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So going back to the needs, wants, and nice to haves, that's all that it is it's giving an intentional purpose to every dollar that you earn. And if you don't have a purpose for that, then what it there's a term I use called leakage. And it's that gap between your your bills and your income that you don't know where that's going. It's leaking through. And so that brings up to that first tool that I wanted to share. So let me see if I can present real quick. So that's where I bring in this budget, and it's hopefully this will come up. And so
Ready?
that's where I bring in this budget, and
That
so
could.
this is perfect, awesome. Um, this is something that I built based off of my experience over the past half a decade or so. And really what it is so me, I'm a very visual person. If you are a visual person like I am, this is going to be a game changer for you. There are tons of apps. I mean, you could scroll for days on the App Store through budgeting and balancing, apps, this, that, and the other. But for me, this tells a story. And that story is how you manage your money. And we all know that what is a credit score other than a calculated, formulated single number that represents how you manage your money. And so, what this does is it tells me, okay, I've got starting with January 1st all the way through, oops, all the way through December 31st. And let me delete those real quick. And then I have my day of the week. I have a running balance. And then I have all of my income, and this could be multiple streams. This can even be duplicated out if you have rental properties or what have you. Followed by your investments and your goals, your emergency fund, and then all of your liabilities. So that's why I put them in red because it's
Hmm.
outgoing. So everything incoming and staying with you is green, and then everything outgoing. And so you start with your biggest one, your mortgage or your rent. That's your roof. Then you have your car payment. If you have student loans, if you have credit cards, your gas, your car gas, utilities. This can also be renamed to just be, let's say, car expenses. Um, and then your utilities. This is a huge one. I broke this one out by itself, subscriptions, and I have a
Yeah.
whole other thing that I can go into that, and then miscellaneous. So this is you could also look at this as your nice to haves because it's going to be your, play money, if you will.
Right. Right.
But this tells a story. This paints a picture of what your life is and your financial life. And so as you're going through and as I'm working with my clients, I tell them, okay, depending on if you're salary or if you're commission based, most of them are salary. So I can say, okay, every second Friday, just round numbers, let's say $1,000. I can put this in and I can go ahead and say every Friday or every other Friday for the next, you could do a quarter, you can do half a year. Oops. Um, I know for a fact that by the end, we'll just do a half a quarter, do a quarter to start. So I know by the end of the quarter, I'm bringing in $15,000. And to most people, that right there is a shock because it's like, well, heck, where is all that money going? And I'm like, okay, I'm about to show you.
Yep.
So, let's leave alone these two for start. But okay, so on the first, we'll start with February because we don't want to start in the negatives if possible. But um let's say your rent is
16.
2,000 a month. 16?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you some numbers.
That works. Yeah. So 1,600 a month. So you bring in $2,000 after taxes. You bring in 2,000 a month and you pay $1,600 on the next um first of the month. Well, now you're all automatically down to $400. And you do that again at the beginning of the next month, and then you do that again at the end of the following month, at the end of the first quarter.
And you walk people through this.
And I walk people through this. Now,
Yeah.
depending on, um,
Because
just to
a
yeah,
lot of people don't do this exercise and haven't done this exercise since maybe high school. And even then, maybe elementary school. Maybe if they talked about like a checkbook that their mom or
right.
dad or someone just let them borrow because of a math project that they're working on. But
That's
yeah, most people most people don't do this. And
no,
just because it's pretty straightforward doesn't mean it's going to be a cakewalk every single time. Sometimes you're going to have questions. Sometimes it should be in a different spot, but that's why it's always good to have someone like you looking at it because you see hundreds of these every single month, different variations, people working in different industries, completely different scenarios. But yeah, it's
and I'll tell
definitely
you
a good way to
one of the
track.
yeah, I mean, it's an eye opener, and I tell you all the time. I tell you, I hear this all the time whenever I'm talking with someone, and I have to, sometimes it's a hard conversation, even before we get to this point, and it's not that I mean to, but people will get offended whenever I'm talking to them, and I'm like, okay, we have a couple different scenarios. Either you are overspending, either you are overspending on something, like for instance, with your line of work with insurance, they may be overspending there. Or the third scenario is that they're not making enough. And so maybe they have to start looking at a second job. But how do you know that? And they're like, no, no, I make $2,500 a month. What are you talking about? I make plenty of money. Okay, well then why is it all gone every 30 days? Oh, well, I have a lot of bills and I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. Don't calm down. Don't get offended. let's take a look at it. And so we start going through this, and they're like, wait, I spend that much on that? Like, why am I paying for that one? And especially when they start getting to this here, and it's like $150 a month in subscriptions, and I'm like, that's a date
Ooh,
night for you and your wife, you know?
yeah.
So it can be really eye-opening, but for a good reason. You know, it's all for a good reason, because if you don't know where you're at, then you don't know where you need to get to. So this is a tool that I give out completely free, um, and I'm happy to go through this exercise with anyone who needs it.
You're going to, is this is this part of a link? Is it on a Google Drive? Where is this?
Yeah, so I've got an ebook. If they go to, and I guess we could put this in the
We
description.
can, yeah, we can link it on the post for sure.
Okay, so if they go to credit.dreamlifeinnovations.com, it'll bring up a website where they can actually, I think it just asks for their name and email. We don't sell any information, anything like that. But it will send them a link with this exact document, and they can get one for themselves. They can fill it out. It has instructions, or will have instructions in the email. And if they have other questions, they know where to find me in the group. But yeah,
What
they
other
they can get this.
what other tools comes with that?
So within the ebook, it's pretty neat. Again, what I've tried to do is really kind of give everything that I would have wanted whenever I first started. Um, but it's basically a do it yourself for credit building or credit repair. Because the fact of the matter is, and some people may yell at me for saying this, but I don't care. I'm completely transparent. Under the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, any and all Americans can build and rebuild their credit and dispute anything on their reports at any given time. Um, they can do all of this on their own. The value that I bring are tools like this, along with the knowledge. And what I've done is I've built this ebook, and I've put all of that in there. Now, so basically to the point where anyone can do all of this on their own. It's just a matter of the fact that, just like with money being finite, so is time.
Hmm.
And so, the value that I bring, in addition to the experience and the do's and don'ts, is that one, I can't fit literally everything in the ebook, or else it would take you a month to read. But also, there's a lot of it that I can do for them. I can't do everything for them, but there's a lot of it that I can. And so I can help them with things like setting this up, helping it become more streamlined for them, to get over that learning curve faster. But it also walks them through different scenarios, different ways to build their credit. And so, to your point, there's a credit tracker in there. There's also links to um, some of the some of the recommended credit monitoring services that I've used in the past, that I recommend to my clients. And there's some other little nuggets and tools in there as well. So
Um, in the in that, is it, so it's just an ebook that they would download?
it's an ebook, and then once they open it, there are live links within the.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. That's awesome. Do you want to show any other tools that are going to be in there besides the this budgeting?
Um, yeah, let me see. I think I can find the.
Don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, no, you're good. You're good. This is my jam, man. I love doing stuff like this. So there's one other one. I can show the credit tracker real quick. This is pretty neat. Um, Again, we also have something similar with a credit monitoring app, but they can use these in tandem. So this is don't
Can
let
you zoom
the
in?
the title fool you. Sorry.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Don't let the title fool you. This can be used for anybody.
Oh,
um,
Busy Husband's credit score tracker.
yeah. I had done this for There we go. I had done this for an exercise, and I decided, well, I want to give this out to the public and everything and everybody as well.
Right.
So let's say if it's the beginning, this is a little bit outdated from last month, but let's say you start with something really really awful. Let's say 430 credit score, right? And so your net change is that. But if I want, let's say I want to buy a house by next January, I'll give myself plenty of room. So 1/1/2025. And I need, if you're talking with a lender or maybe you're talking with a real estate agent, preferably a lender, they'll be able to give you an exact score based off of the loan that you need to get. So let's say you need at least a 710 and new house next year! Exclamation. So that's my why. That's my driver.
Yep.
If I don't have a driver, you might as well just be shooting in the dark, like we talked about earlier. Now, let's say um, this month I want to try and bring it up. Let's say 100 points. Okay, so 530. That's admirable. Um, so I'm going to, for this month, I'm going to pay off. Um, let's say 5,000, 1,500 in debt. And as a result, and I'm going to let that revolve. Maybe it's credit card debt. I'm going to let that revolve. And it brings me up to, now I don't hold me to this because I can't tell you if one thing is going to lead to something else. But let's say in doing so, our goal was 100 points. And let's say we happen to get 120. Okay. So that's 550. So we've netted 120 points. And so we're in good shape. Now let's say, um, you know, let's say April was a tough month. Let's say we, blew a tire and um, we had some other expenses. Maybe we had to take the dog to the vet. Blown tire.
Poor dog.
I know, right? They can be expensive.
Yeah, they really
Well,
can.
we're glad that Fido is doing good. But let's say that was, all in a um, $600 loss, and we had to put that on credit cards. So now we let that revolve. We didn't get it paid down. Okay, things happen, and so now it goes down to, it's going to drop a little bit down to 490. Oh, now it's a drop of -60. But then let's say we get a scratcher. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend scratchers, but that's
No,
some
not for a
people's
retirement plan.
not for a retirement plan. But let's say you get lucky and you hit it for 2,000, and you put that towards it, and let's say it goes up another 75 points. That would be 65, 65. Okay. So you can start to see. I'm not going to fill this all in, but you can kind of start to
Right.
see how it's growing or shrinking from month to month, and that's a good indicator because normally you're going to get some kind of substantial uh, credit refresh or credit update once every 30 to 45 days.
Right.
And so this is a really good top of mind tracker to keep those goals front and center, but also keep your progress front and center as well. So that will come in the ebook as well. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a pretty easy way to track and know what like the big impacts are from your own credit rather than kind of just letting it happen. Um, Man, those are pretty good budgeting tools. Again, we will be putting that ebook in the description whenever we repost with a thumbnail and everything. So that'll be there. Then obviously I'll tag you, make sure you get it. And then one of the one of the last things that we're going to go into were the credit tips.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know you've had a lot of events, speakings, and a whole bunch of stuff about credit. Um, and I know that your top 5 credit tips, your top 10 credit tips are pretty darn good. You want to get into the top 5 and carry over the last 5?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Let
Cool.
me pull that up on my screen here real quick. Um, yeah, so what I did was I kind of put together kind of a top 10 of the most not really frequently asked questions, but most impactfully asked questions. So IAQs, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so the first one, um, let's see, this is a good one. The first one that I wanted to bring up was will adding a new credit card help or hurt my credit?
It's a good one. In the be Can I guess?
Sure.
I'm kidding. I kind of cheated. I know a
I
little
know you
bit.
do. Yeah.
I guess it's gonna hurt in the short term. It could definitely help in the long run.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a double-edged sword, but it's a necessary evil.
Right?
So when you add that new credit card, a couple of factors are going to be impacted: your payment history, your credit card utilization, and your account age. Well, and actually 4 in your hard inquiries. All
Yeah.
those are going to be affected. So your payment history um, will will go. Actually, no, your account history will stay the same. So it is just the 3. Your credit card utilization will actually go down because you're averaging in your credit limit to the rest of your other cards and your other
Yep.
accounts. Your account age is actually going to drop temporarily as that account is aging, as that new account is aging, and it will slowly come back up. And then your hard inquiry, because they did have to run your credit and do a hard credit check, it will add a hard inquiry for 2 years, and then that will drop off. So temporarily, it will drop, but as you use that credit card responsibly, it'll exponentially increase it, and it'll help you more in the long run than it will hurt you.
Now, quick question. Does it make a difference if it's a just a unsecured credit card or a secured credit card? Because I know in the beginning, whenever you're building credit, maybe your credit's bad or maybe you don't have any credit at all. Usually, one of the best ways to do it is a secured credit card, or so I've been led to believe. Is that still the case?
Yeah, so, it's gonna be along the same lines. The only difference between a secured card and an unsecured card is, with an unsecured card, the a third party creditor, is giving you the credit limit based off of your history and your profile. An
Hmm.
unsecured or a secured card, you're dictating the limit based off of a deposit.
Yeah.
And so, again, as you're using that, it will continue to help based off of your behavior, and your activity. Um, but no, it'll still act the same. Yeah, good
Right.
question.
And then for people who I kind of just went into that, but for people who don't know, secured credit card is whenever you put like $1,000 or $5,000 down on a credit card, and essentially you're just borrowing from yourself until your credit builds up, and then they actually return that money to you, and then you move on to unsecured cards. Um, but yeah, no, secured is how I started because I started kind of late in my mid 20s with credit cards and got like $1,000 secured card, and that was my first credit card. I was like in my mid 20s when I got my first credit card. Um, but so that was number one,
So that
right?
was well, that was actually technically number 1 and 2.
Okay, nice, nice.
No
So
worries.
three. What's three
So
gonna
number
be?
3 number 3 is, will paying off a collection help or hurt my credit score? So this is a
S-
big one that I get. Yeah.
So I would I would think that that would, I mean, obviously that would help, but you're also closing an account, which is interesting, right?
Yeah, well, so the account's already closed.
Okay,
So once the account hits collection status, it's already been closed by the creditor.
gotcha.
So
Yeah,
that
so
part
yeah, pay
is
it off.
taken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get rid of it.
So you definitely wanna get rid of it. This one is another kind of a double-edged sword
Hmm.
because, um, sometimes if and this is where not knowing what you don't know can kind of hurt you or kind of burn you a little bit. So if you don't get it in writing that the creditor will remove the account or mark it as paid as agreed, not paid as less or paid as agreed as less, something along those lines. Um, it will still show up as a
Can you
negative.
can you repeat the question and repeat the answer?
Yeah. So the question is, will paying off a collection help or hurt my credit score? And the answer is that it really depends. So if you decide to pay off a credit account collection, a collection account, make sure that you have it in writing that the creditor or the collection agency, whoever it still sits with, will agree to do one of two things: either remove the account entirely or change its status to be marked as paid as agreed. Anything outside of those two, and it'll still show up as a negative.
And there's a lot of collection agencies out there that service, so they're technically third-party collectors, is how they come in. Like maybe it's for Chase or Wells Fargo, and then you have ABC Company Collections. ABC Company Collections is the one who's calling you, and that's the third party. But not always. They don't always have the authority to report your credit back to the credit bureau. So they have to request it from the originator.
Right.
So you definitely always need it in writing. Writing is a huge piece whenever you're working on something like that. That's why I wanted you to repeat it,
Yeah.
because I've had friends. I was in the banking industry previously, so I'm really familiar with it. But I've had friends who got screwed over with collections because
Oh,
they didn't get anything in writing.
many, many times. Yeah. And honestly, my my rule of thumb is if it's less than $500, ideally if it's less than $100, but I know with accounts being bigger these days, if it's less than $500 and you have the spendable income without strapping yourself to pay it off, then you can go that route. If it's more than that, let's say it's $2,000, $5,000, something like that, work with me and I can help to get it disputed to see if we can get it removed entirely just through your own your own right as an American citizen operating under the FCRA. A lot
Right.
of times you can get that removed.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's a lot of paperwork gets lost in the process. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
There was a Here's an example. Uh, I'm trying to be careful how I'm wording this because I don't
Okay.
want to say too much, but there was a company that, in my previous line of work, we one of the departments, we purchased debt from major companies, and there was a uh, auto loan originator. So we were purchasing auto loans, like we purchased, a couple thousand auto loans. That's people who still owe money on the car and they still have the car. So we're just pretty much going to be servicing it, getting them back to current or repossessing the vehicle. There's everything from top to bottom. But um, man, what it came down to, whenever we bought the portfolio, they released all of the liens. So in
Oh,
order
wow.
to get the bank put back on the liens, so they would then be our liens,
Mhm.
they had to send a letter to the consumer, tell them that the payoff letter that they received was not real, and they have to re-sign their information back on the lien. And obviously, they don't have to. So
No.
a lot of people got a free car. A lot of people got a free
Wow.
car. It was a pretty big mess up.
Wow,
Some
that's
stuff
big.
happened, but yeah, that was
That's big.
during one of our purchases, but yeah, that was a couple thousand accounts. That's a lot. That's a lot of
That's a
money
lot of
just gone
cars.
down the drain. So, like, imagine, like, the average loan might be 20 to 30,000. So 20,000 times 1,000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
couple
that's a lot of
million.
money that the bank missed out on.
Right.
That person's salary was definitely not paid for. Um but, uh
Yeah,
but
for
yeah,
sure.
no, stuff happens all the time. Whenever you're disputing stuff, you'd be surprised, um, what really
Right.
falls through the cracks because whenever it transfers from business to business or maybe your mortgage loan, that's pretty popular. A lot of mortgage loans are being sold from servicer to servicer or originator to now it's a servicer. Um, it happens more often than you think, and that's when you get a letter in the mail, "Hey, we're the new loan originators. Hey, we're the new lien holders. You'll be talking to us now. Here's our direct contact. This is what we'll be doing. Here's your new account," or it says something like, "You don't need to do anything. All your information's traded. Welcome to the Bank 123 Club," whatever. But it's there you get notified in the mail, usually the email as well. But it's definitely something to keep track of and just make sure all your stuff is right because they could also increase your balance during that transaction. And that's against the law because that voids the contract, the original contract that you signed with the originator.
Mhm.
So there's just
Okay.
a lot of things to think about whenever stuff like that happens. But I know we're kind of going off on a rant. We're way past an hour now. I think we just finished the third tip, right?
3rd tip, yep.
Yeah, yeah. What's a fourth one? What do you got for us?
So the 4th one kind of is in that same vein. So will shopping for a new car while working on building my credit help or hurt my score?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think that would definitely hurt the score in the short run. Long run, it would be better. Do they always report payments? I know not every car um, or financial arm of the car companies reports. But is that's pretty common for the bigger volume dealerships, right?
It is, yeah. For most service most loan originators these days for auto loans are gonna report. They don't have to report to all 3,
Hmm.
obviously, but most of the time they will report at least to 1, if
Is
not
there
2.
what are the three that you're talking about? It's
The 3
Experian?
bureaus? Yeah,
Yeah,
Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion.
Experian, Equifax, TransUnion.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't recommend having people check their credit directly at those sources. Where would
No.
you told me or we talked about this because I'm familiar with those uh credit monitoring services because they're really just data collectors. They don't
Right.
they sell your data 100%. They sell your data. I know that because I've used the systems. They sell your data. All three of those companies. But what's the one that you were telling me about that was pretty secure?
So I personally recommend, use actually 2. So there's one called MyFICO.
Hmm. Okay.
So those daily reporting or daily monitoring services like Karma and some of the others, um, they're gonna use a model called the Vantage score. And I hear this all the time. It's like, what's the one that's not accurate, or what's the one that's accurate as opposed to these other ones that are not accurate? And I have to explain to them, it's like, it's not that they're not accurate, it's that they use a different model. And so they're weighted differently.
Hmm.
And also it's that some creditors will report to all three bureaus, and then other creditors will not report to all three bureaus. But I would use my FICO. I think it's like 20 or $30 a month. But what here's what I would recommend: get in a subscription with my FICO. Have them give you your reports because they'll give you all three scores, um, FICO scores, and then cancel it for the month or utilize it for that month and then cancel it at
Right.
the end. Because realistically, you only need to pull your scores once every 3 months or about once a quarter. Not too much unless you're actively working on it. Not too much is going to change inside of a quarter. Um, the other one though is again with the protection plan that we have. We use a program called Ultra Score, and even though it is the Vantage Score model, it helps because it allows us to send any updates. If we're working on behalf of the client, we can send updates through to that app. And so you'll see
Gotcha.
changes in your score a lot faster through that app as opposed to some of the others.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, for
good
sure.
question.
Yeah. Man, that's good stuff. Next one.
A-
I
And
don't mean to
then,
keep taking you off track.
no, no, you're good. You're good. This is good stuff. I could really do this all day, but yeah, I know we're at a little bit over. Will having a lot of accounts help or hurt my credit score?
If they're in good health, I would think, not always is it going to be the more the better, but I think you have to really find a balance in there, especially with the longevity of the accounts. Because if you go and open a whole bunch of accounts really quickly, you're definitely going to be taking a hit.
Yep. So I was doing some research not too long ago, and according to Equifax, so this is straight from the source, if you will. Um,
Right.
according to Equifax, they said it's generally recommended that you have 2 to 3 credit card accounts at a time, in addition to other types of credit. So I can go into a whole long spill about ideal, optimizing credit card usage and all that kind of stuff. And we can talk about that offline if people have questions. But that's normally about what I would recommend: 2 to 3, maybe 4 credit cards, each with its own purpose. In addition to maybe a car note or your mortgage or maybe some student loans. That's going to be a good, well-rounded mix of accounts.
Yeah. That sounds pretty close to the average American.
I think so. Yeah. It's just they don't know that they have it.
Right. Um, let's see. Kill me with number 5, man. And I know you have 5 more, right?
I think that was number 5. I can give
Oh,
one more though.
yeah, give me one more. I thought, okay, I'm miscounting.
All good. I know 1 and 2 were kind of one and the same. So
That's right. Okay, okay.
yeah. Um, okay. So in the same vein, will paying off a maxed out credit card help or hurt my credit score?
I would think that would help because there's also that percent of available credit and used credit,
Yeah.
as long as there's that balance. What is that, like 20% or 30%, something like that? You know what I'm talking about? I know you do.
Yeah, yeah. So it's your credit card utilization rate or your credit utilization rate.
Mhm.
And so they say rule of thumb is 30%. Ideally, you want to keep it below 10%. So when you think about that, going back to those insights from your budget, if you can only, let's say you have $1,000 limit, if you only spend $100 of it, you're at 10%. $300 of it is at 30%. Well, let's say you only have a small credit card and it's at, say, a $300 limit. 10% is only going to be $30, And so at that point, that was one of the big insights for me was like credit cards are not meant to be an addition, a supplement to money. It's or a replacement to money. It's supposed to be a
Right,
supplement.
right.
And so you're not meant to look at credit cards as free money. And so you're really realistically supposed to keep them around, 5 to 10% and then pay them off. And so the question was, will a maxed out credit card will paying off a maxed out credit card help or hurt your credit score? It will most definitely help. I've seen just from paying off credit, lines of credit, I've seen scores jump 2 to 300 points. Like,
Man,
it's
that's
insane
a lot.
how much they impact them. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So like, let's say you maxed out your credit card. It's kind of been there for a little bit. You pay it off. Do you have to obviously that you would want the history of new credit cards and their new payments getting paid every single day, but that huge jump that you see from just paying off an old credit card, that that I didn't think it would make that big of a difference. That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the
But I
biggest
don't
thing
I don't
is
see it every day. That's the
right,
you see
right.
it, I don't,
The biggest thing is just making sure it's still open. If it's
right?
going into a collection status, you're not gonna see that jump.
Gotcha. Okay.
If it's still open and it's maxed out, um, now don't be late about it. If it's gone 3 or 4 or 5 months and then you pay it off, you're probably not gonna see that big of a jump, but let's say you max out, a $5,000 credit card and then 3 weeks later you pay it off, or you pay the minimum and then 2 months later you pay it off so you don't have a late payment. Yeah, you're gonna see a pretty big jump.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I I bet you have some pretty interesting case studies. Do you have any case studies on your website, or you just mainly share that with your clients whenever you're talking to them through different scenarios?
Yeah, it's more of a case by case
Yeah.
situation, but that's a good idea. I may be able to put um, some situations out there, maybe without PI, without the personal info,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
but
It
just
can be hard to do sometimes. I did case studies for insurance. I had to check with a couple people about verbiage and things that I was using, but yeah, man. But I have case studies for individuals, families, small businesses, and enterprises on my website. Um,
cool.
but yeah,
Okay.
uh, but yeah, no, I'm sure you could create a lot of case studies, and I'm sure a lot of your clients would be more than willing to volunteer information and their experience. Because whenever you fix your credit and you're able to do the things you've wanted to do for a while and not really have to look over your shoulder or be worried about collections calls and stuff like that, it's just a different life. It's more
It is.
peaceful
It is. It's a huge weight off your shoulders.
for
I
sure.
remember the first time that well, shortly after I started working on mine, and I saw, like, I think 3 different collections removed, and I was just like, "Wow." Like, you're right, you don't get the phone calls anymore, you don't have to worry about what's coming in the mail, it's a different way of living for sure.
For sure. Man, it was definitely good having you on. Um, I guarantee that we'll do a round 2 in the future.
Would love it. Yeah, would love to.
Um, Plug yourself, Dream Life, where can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, dreamlifeinnovations.com is my website. I'm on Facebook at dreamlifeinnovations.com, Instagram, LinkedIn, um, and then email is credit at dreamlifeinnovations.com.
For sure. And then on Facebook, your personal Facebook is obviously under your name, Jordan Bloomingdale. If you haven't added him, definitely add him. He has a pretty big network and it's across the United States. Um, man, I'm
Jordan
def
A. Bloomingdale.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah, Jordan A. Bloomingdale. But man, pleasure to have you on. I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to your future. That's why we've partnered up and tackled a lot of projects together.
We have. Yeah,
It's
it's been fun.
Yeah, for sure. And this is obviously another project that we're working on. So it's definitely a ride and a journey to kind of grow and create what world you want to create. But again, that's the same thing with credit. You have to really narrow down that foundation and build it out so you can start creating. And that's kind of where it all starts. Do you have anything closing statements?
Um, I would just say, don't be afraid of, what you've done in the past. We all have mistakes. It's the part of putting your head in the sand and pretending like they don't exist that's going to continue to hurt you. But as long as you're, willing to change and willing to acknowledge and ready to move forward, that's when things can get fun. And I'm willing to help however I can to help facilitate those changes. So
The only way out is through, and you do it with Jordan.
I love it.
Good
Love it.
good talking to you, man.
Same to you. Thanks so much.
We'll catch up later for sure, man. Later.
All right. See you.
Thanks, guys.